And today I'm going to talk about what drove me to BMC as an employee. We all make decisions about who we're going to work for, and I worked for the Department of Homeland Security Data Centers as our data center operations director for several years. And I never thought I would go work for a vendor. And BMC approached me about bringing my service management knowledge to their products, and one of the first questions that I asked them was, do you use your own software? I interviewed with 3 other competitors, and the answer to that was, we use less than 50% of our own software. I found that very disappointing. BMC uses all of the products that they use. So my IT is something that I use on a daily basis if I have problems with my computer. I had problems with my computer getting here. Flew from Houston, Texas yesterday, landed in Amsterdam for my 4-hour layover. Like all good IT professionals, I needed to open my laptop, check what was going on. Now, those of you who have done desktop support ever will recognize this. You open it up, turn it on, and it says, no boot device found. That's not good. Hard drive. So I found very quickly that my laptop wasn't working, but my iPad was. Logged into my IT, immediately issued a ticket. I had not only a laptop waiting for me at the hotel, which is very much thanks to the local team here in Russia, but I travel from here to Israel, and I have a spare hard drive waiting for me in Israel when I land on Sunday. Those are the types of efficiencies and automations that I want to talk to you about that BMC has done. We have a phrase we like to use. I hope it translates in Russian very well, but we like to drink our own champagne. Everybody likes champagne. I prefer to drink my own. If I owned a winery, I would drink my own, right? So we use our own products at BMC, and today what I'm going to talk about is what drove us and why we stay so up to date with our products. These are just some of them. You don't have to show me your hands, but how many of you communicate the successes that you have in IT? You tell your users why you were successful and how you saved them money as a company. We didn't. We always sent out these messages that said, it's broke, service down, we will not be able to access, please do not open this software. Very negative emails. In addition to the negative emails, we've started accenting the positive. With our current data center move and using capacity optimization, we were able to save 30% off the bottom line and trim the general IT budget for BMC by 30%. That's important as an employee. We're privately owned. I own a portion of BMC. That's important for me as an employee and also as a shareholder, okay? You need to make sure that things are mobile. I've seen Eric talked about it, Anthony talked about it. I have 3 similar devices, not all phones, but I have an iPhone, an iPad, and then I also have a Droid. I have a a laptop for Mac, and then I also have a PC. I don't carry them all, but I have them. So it's important that we design and use products that are mobile, accessible anywhere, anytime. Why should I be any different at work than I am? Well, BMC supports that, so we're going to talk about what we did. How many of you are adding applications to your infrastructure faster than you can keep up with? This is the journey that BMC has gone through, just adding applications to our infrastructure. So each one of these applications you see are something that we support. None of these disappeared as we went through the years. They just keep going, and you'll notice that they grow faster and faster. Kind of like in chemistry, I hope one day that we supersaturate and can't take anymore. But how do you control all of that and still maintain, I have less budget, do it faster, minimum downtime, Don't introduce risk into your environment. How do you keep up with that? Well, we started very simply by identifying and categorizing all of our applications. And yes, I'm talking about starting the creation of a service catalog. When you look at Eric talked about today, primarily supporting your business. IT is the business. Many of your companies could not survive without IT. So how do you start making sure that you're supporting that business in a way that IT focuses on the business? Well, this is how we did it. This was not something we did overnight. Please don't think that this was a 2-day activity. This took a room full of people and a small room. Too large a room and there's too many opinions, hard to control. 5 people built this, where 55 wanted to contribute. We all have that. So as we built this, we looked at what our primary business support was and broke it down. Then we broke it down into services. So the applications we were supporting was previous. Now we broke it down into services. This starts to look like a service catalog we can manage. Do not try to overcomplicate your service catalog. What is your core business? What do you do? What do you provide for not only your internal customers, but for your external customers? Some of these things may be familiar to you. Most of you in this room would love to know that customer support management is an entire business service. So BMC has an entire business service dedicated to the people in this room. As our services go down, our documentation or whatever it is, that's a problem. Then we also had to take care of the legal and HR and those teams. And then here towards the bottom, you have the shared services. We all have them. Directory services, databases, DevOps, IT, information security. They're all necessary to support being able to implement everything. So that's why they're across the bottom. Now, as we continue to do this, now you're starting to look at our technical services. So how do we start to roll this up and make the connection? From a show of hands, how many of you know what your technical CMDB looks like in a service model? Infrastructure components to IT services. How many of you know what that looks like? There's one guy over there that's admitting to it. Okay? A lot of us know what infrastructure goes to build a service. Whether you use automation to do so, or whether it's manually done. Everybody has one expert, at least one expert, in their company that knows everything about the infrastructure. And being a pedestrian here in Moscow, every once in a while that person takes a step off a curb wrong, you'll need to look for somebody else. So how do you document this? Well, we started documenting it through automation. We were using automation to draw service models that allowed us to start connecting them through technical services up to business services. Now we're able to be a technically and business service aware IT organization where we focus on the things that matter the most. Higher priority lives in the areas that are customer focused. So that customer support management that was way over on the right-hand side of the slide, if that goes down or shows some sort of problem, that's a high priority for us. You guys are our revenue. That's why it has a higher priority. You all have the critical business service that if it goes down, it affects your bottom line faster than any other. Additionally, one of our others is the order management system. If we do not get our orders booked by midnight of the end of quarter, we do not get to recognize that income. It has to wait till the following quarter. So we have to wait 3 months before we can recognize that revenue. We all have cycles like that. So how does this play into IT? Those service models are then utilized by our technologies to assist our staff in efficiently and effectively supporting the organization. So the service models that we gain through automatic discovery and then continue to build into technical services that are aligned to business services have now been brought into, and some of you who own ProactiveNet are recognizing what this is, we're able to make business service aware monitoring decisions and get out of the component level monitoring. We use ProactiveNet and application performance management to be able to monitor our infrastructure. Not only are we monitoring the infrastructure, but we're monitoring infrastructure all the way through application performance, including things like middleware management, transactions, and watching that entire infrastructure. So now we can see it business service related. If you've ever been a server administrator, you get an email from whatever your monitoring system is. I did this. When I first started in IT, I was a Unix administrator. When one of my servers went down or had a problem, I would get an email that said, server XYZ12 CPU utilization high, 99%. Well, how many of those emails do you get a day? I had an email rule that sent them into the trash can because some of them were just warnings. You get hundreds of those things. Your phone was constantly going off. And prior to, 2007 when smartphones were introduced, pagers were vibrating across tables. All right? So how did we make this business service aware? When I now get an email, I get an email that tells me a business service is affected following this model, and the reason that business service is affected is because this specific IT component is out, and it will even give me a probable cause. Can we do 100% root cause analysis electronically? No. I wouldn't begin to tell you that we can. Can we get you 90% of the way there by being able to analyze what infrastructure changes have been made in the last 7 days or greater? For anywhere from today throughout the history that we're tracking change. Can we notice whether drift has happened? And what I mean by drift is the state of the server exactly the same as it was the last time we checked on it? So that's undocumented change. Has undocumented change occurred in your environment and need to be rolled back? Have you been able to search the log files? With the recent release of ProactiveNet, you're now able to incorporate log files into your analysis. So being able to take a snapshot of time, look at the data that's presented from your monitoring solutions, potentially any change requests that are in the system, looking at blade logic for potential undocumented change or documented change, and looking at the logs. That can get you, that's pretty much what you're looking at when a human takes over and looks at it. But you're not putting 9 people in the room. One of the savings that BMC was able to gain, and I know we've all gotten this phone call. All right, this is down. I need 1 person from the Windows Server team, 1 from the Unix team. By the way, it's always the network's fault, even when it's not. I need 1 person from the database team. I need 1 person from the application team, middleware team. By the time you're done, you've woken up 10 people at 2 o'clock in the morning for a business service that nobody uses except from 8 to 5. Couldn't we wake up at 6 instead? As long as it's back online by 8? And do we need 10? So we were able to minimize the amount of time we were waking our operations teams up. We were able to do it at an efficient time. If it's a 24-hour service, wake them up at 2 a.m. But if it's not, give it a lower priority and wake them up at a reasonable time. We do have automatic notification. We have a partnership with X Matters, and it has this auto dial feature. It will call somebody until they pick up the phone. And if you don't pick up, it calls the next person in line. And then the next person until somebody answers. So not only is it just text type messaging, it also does phone messaging. Pick it up, it gives you an automated message. So these are some of the ways that we were able to use those maps that are automated and bring them through. Now BMC, 30-year-old company, started as a mainframe. So we map from mainframe all the way through. BMC has a tagline right now, and it's extremely accurate. From mainframe to mobile. Whoever thought those two things would be working together? One of the things that Eric didn't touch on when he talked about SMAC. The mobile transactions that are happening every day have actually increased mainframe utilization. Think about it. When you check your bank balance or perform a transaction, I used to look at it once a week just to make sure that, no offense to my wife, but she didn't drain me down to zero and I still could spend some money. Now I can check how many times, now that I can just go like this, swipe, put in a passcode, hit the button that has my bank icon on it, and I'm now looking at my bank balance. What is it doing? A web interface is talking to a middleware box, which is talking to an application layer, which is then talking to a mainframe. Mainframe utilization has skyrocketed because of mobile devices, especially in the banking industry. So some of the lessons learned. Do not do this in a silo. Every IT organization has silos, divisions. One of the things that we learned is that every silo had its own agenda. It wanted to do something slightly different. We had to get everybody on the same page, so bring them out of their independent units. Fewer business services, the better. When we first did our service catalog, we had more than 200 services, top-level services. It became difficult to manage. The other one was take a top-down approach. This worked best for us. I've worked with customers at BMC over the last 4.5 years that have taken a bottom-up approach. It takes a little bit longer. It requires that you really have an understanding of what is in the top layer before you take that bottom-up approach. But it can be done. We're not saying don't do it. It just worked best for us that we took the top-down approach. We took one business service at a time. When we did our project, we took the most business critical one and we mapped it from the top to the bottom. Then we did the next one. We did not try to take off more than we can chew. I've worked with several large companies in both the US and EMEA. Although my accent is American, I've only been back in the US for a year. I was living in Europe and responsible for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Spent many, many times sitting with customers and consulting with them on how to build service models. The configuration management process is the most critical. BMC IT couldn't go into the next step of maturity without having a true CMDB that mapped every single one of our services from top to bottom. That's how we got that extra added value out of what we're getting. Incident, problem, change, all of those processes were good, but they couldn't get better until we finished this. Some of the other things that we had to do is we had to change the way we worked. We all get very protective of our jobs. Well, as times change, unfortunately, you need to also. One of the things that as I work with customers, you've heard a lot about, Robin Verbeet talked about automation. I talk with customers and the first thing out of their mouth is, but this automation will lose like 6 positions. No. We didn't get rid of, terminate, whatever you want to call it, any of our server engineers. None. And I'll talk about what we did here in a minute. I'll show you what we did. Okay? Those guys don't like to patch and do the monotony. They want to learn and grow. So what did we do? We shifted the work down. We gave the Tier 1 team more flexibility and ability. We allowed the Tier 2 team to get away from some of the monotony and allowed the engineers to be engineers. Will they ever 100% just be able to work on new projects? No. They're the experts. That's the top of the technical ladder. They're still going to be involved in break fix. From a job satisfaction perspective, when we made this shift to allow our employees to spend less time doing break fix, we watched our retention rate, the amount of employees that stayed working with BMC, to increase. Tenure increased. Because you're not killing your people with the monotony. We created what was called an automation engineer. This person's job is to look at ways to find efficiencies through automation, design those efficiencies in the tools that they have, or identify a tool that would do it differently. If BMC doesn't have a tool that does it, then we would buy one. We don't manage Salesforce, but we use it a lot. Okay? They would then turn around and take these requests, do an analysis on them, basically a probability study, how successful can this be? And that's their job. So server administrators took on this role. Some of them weren't the right fit because they weren't the right level, but we did find something for everybody. We even built job descriptions. This is a postable position at BMC. I put this job description on the internet and people apply for it. We created dashboards that make our metrics available. Now, we did use business objects to build and create these dashboards. These are some of the key KPIs. The screenshots that you see behind and the savings that we had are the savings that we've seen from the projects we've had. So when we started to think about the way we automate, this is just a small screenshot of the projects we've completed. It's created tremendous efficiencies. One of my favorite is a solution to a problem that everybody has, password reset. How many times have you personally locked out your account? Well, now all I have to do, there's a cell phone number that I have, I SMS the phrase unlock to that number, my account's unlocked, I get a text back that says you're done. You can log in. You have no idea how often I do that right after I change my password. We have to change ours every 90 days. It's a pretty common security policy, but I never remember it. And I never remember to change it on all the devices. Got to change it in the iPhone, and then the iPad, and the laptop, right? It will lock my account out. So that unlock feature is great. I use it a lot every 90 days. That's just one of them, okay? Also the termination of employees. People leave, whether we make them leave or whether they choose to leave. How many of you have to audit for the fact that you have a ton of accounts that are still active out there? That the employee hasn't worked here for a year. Okay, we were able to automate that. Some of the things that are critical success factors. We established a service management office. The service management office is responsible for the processes that Anthony talked about. Anthony is our ITIL guru. Some of you have seen him speak at ITSMF here in Russia. He speaks frequently in ITSMF in the US. I've been able to speak with him. It's a great honor to work with him. Okay, we also established a BSM engineering team. This is where the automation team sits. Okay, you don't have to call it BSM, but we have a team that's just dedicated for efficiency. Everybody's ITIL trained. Not just basic, but more than that. Okay, we constructed the service catalog, built and maintained a CMDB. Okay, building the CMDB is hard, but maintaining it is critical. I've worked with a lot of customers that within a few days their CMDB is now out of sync. There's no automation in place. And it can go out that fast. Create a culture of automation. We even had employee incentives for employees that saw a process that could be automated and would make a recommendation. Those automation engineers would review it, and then they would be able to, and if it was accepted, put into place, and being used, then there would be financial benefit for that employee that made the recommendation. They would see it in their paycheck. Create a culture, and whatever works in your particular organization, find a way to get people to think about automation. One of the things that's supposed to say thank you, any questions? Must have been the version that I sent, I apologize. One of the things that's been a real pleasure with working with BMC is I get to spend time with customers. When our master of ceremonies did my introduction, he says I'm the director of technical marketing. Technical marketing has nothing to do with marketing. Most times marketing, you think of ads and publicity and, creating fun things to do. I'm a technologist at heart, always have and always will be. And one of the things that I get to do that's a real pleasure in my job is I get to work with customers like yourselves. And I also get to work with our BMC IT organization. And I've run organizations similar at the Department of Homeland Security and in other locations. But an IT organization for a $2.2 billion company is not exactly a small, petite, little mom and pop shop. It can be complex. And we were able to really dig in and contribute to the company's bottom line by just creating efficiencies. And the central place that we started to do that is building those service models. So any piece of advice that you could take away from today, and you'll see the service models being built. I'll talk about them later in the performance and availability track. In the service management track, I'll talk about CMDB. They even utilize it in automation. The key to that, to BSM or business service management as a cohesive unit, is that centralized data store. Being able to show the relationships that affect your business and being able to make smart business decisions that minimize the risk and increase the impact to the company's bottom line. Whether it's you're directly providing solutions for your customers or whether you're saving or avoiding costs. So hopefully for the rest of today, you'll find ways, or new ways, of being able to implement that in your organizations. So I thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Our Masters of Ceremonies will come up now and probably dismiss you to lunch. So thank you very much.